Hi again, my name's Nick. About 3 years ago, or just over 3 years ago, you may remember I did a video showing the reverse camera and front camera installation on my Volvo XC60 using a Volvo Tech VBB8 unit, which to this day has been as good as gold. It really is a brilliant system. It's been superb for me, and today I hope to install some more exciting tech to my Volvo, my aging Volvo. But first of all, the reason I'm doing another video, I would have just done this in the weekend, is because I've had such an amazing amount of feedback from you guys, and apologies I'm not brilliant at always replying to questions. This is not my day job at all. I said from the very beginning of the last video, I'm not an expert, I'm not a mechanic and engineer. I'm just a guy who fancies having a crack at fitting stuff from time to time and just want kit inside my car that's normally a very, very expensive upgrade. Now, Apple CarPlay is an option on the new Volvo XC60s and the newer Volvo ranges. On this model, it just wasn't available. Not only will it do Apple CarPlay, it will also do Android Auto. I think that's what it's called. I'm not an Android phone user. But anyway, so we're going to certainly test it with CarPlay. I can't help you with the Android side. And this is what's involved. Basically, it's very similar to the VBB8. It's a silver box. And this silver box has a few connectors on it. Actually, interestingly, has an HDMI output on it, which enabled me to do testing earlier on. But of course, certainly won't integrate with this unit. What I will use for this unit is the standard RCA connectors for video. Oh, I'm making a bit of a mess of this, which you'll see in just a second. And the way it will work is not with a touch screen, but with a jog dial interface, which is this thing here. Now, I have tried a few different models that promise these features. As I say, this is the only one in my testing that has worked successfully, where the buttons are intuitive, quickly and smoothly. So yeah, if you're gonna do it, I would seriously recommend getting this kit. Anyway, before we go any further, here's a little video we shot earlier, which is just going to show you exactly what's inside this box and exactly how it works. I've just plugged it into a computer monitor, so watch that bit first. So this is the unit that I'm going to fit to the car. This is actually the third one of these Apple CarPlay and Android Audio units that I've had. And the reason I've got this set up at home is because I wanted to thoroughly test these things out before I installed them inside the car, of course, because yeah, to me, the idea that you can retrofit Apple CarPlay, and this particular model will also allow you to have MP3 playback, it allows you to have video playback, it's got Bluetooth built into it. I mean, the functionality of this thing is absolutely amazing. But as I say, this is the third unit I've had that promises to do this job. This one had more features, and they all looked pretty similar. Some of them come in a black box, some of them come in a silver box, but this one specifically seems to be good. I know it's good because I've had it set up here for a couple of weeks, and I'm going to plug it in now so you can see how it does work. The problems I had with the other ones, you'll see all this throughout the video as we fit it, the problems I had with the other ones is that the controls, either one, weren't quite as intuitive as this. This works just with a rolling motion and, you know, backwards and forwards for skipping. There's a home button that you can access Siri. It's a simple push down to select, so it's really quick and easy. Some of them were just a wheel, other were just buttons, and it was, I just didn't find it very good. The problem with the other ones is they froze all the time, so the control interface froze on screen, making it totally useless, totally unfit for purpose. This one seems okay. This one, interestingly, came with this, which is a touch screen interface. Right, so the basics of it then, I've got a monitor here. For this demonstration, I'm going to plug it in through an HDMI lead straight into the back of a monitor I've got here. I've plugged in the main power connector here, which gives me then, these are all helpfully labelled actually, which gives me my remote control connection. Obviously this will all be hidden in the car. And it gives me my microphone connection. That was something actually worth saying. The mic that came with this one was far superior quality to the other CarPlay units that I've been testing. And you know me, I do love all the labelling, and this is very clearly labelled. Then we've got a phone connector here, which, and they don't include this, you need to get one of your Apple or Android connectors to go in there. This is all very messy. This is just to show you on a bigger screen how the thing works. So that's plugged in and ready to go. And what I've done here, I mean, this is really basic. I've just hooked up the ignition live, the permanent live, and the ground to the crocodile clips here. Put a bit of plastic over it so it doesn't arc. And I'm going to use a DC power supply here, which has controllable current and voltage. Now, hopefully, we're going to get a picture. There you go. So you can see now the controls, they are backlit controls, light up, and it's giving me options of CarPlay, Android, Bluetooth, music, video ins. You can add further video inputs, and then I've got a whole range of settings here where you can change display brightness, you can change the wallpaper, so you can, for example, it could start up with I don't know, you can customize this as well, so you could have a Volvo screen as it starts up. This just works beautifully. Now let me just put my phone in and unlock it, and instantly, without touching any buttons, it's going straight through to CarPlay. This is smooth, and you've got to remember the size of this screen, it's still quite a crisp picture, and I'm able to scroll through, and yeah, what I love and what I wanted it for, Waze. I mean, this is it's as good as SatNav gets in my books. And also Amazon Music. I'm an Amazon Music subscriber rather than Spotify, but it's got everything. BBC Sounds I like as well. But yeah, we can go through all this later. Basically, it's all the good bits with CarPlay in your car. I'm not an Android phone user, so I can't test that, I'm afraid, but all the details for that are in the instruction manual with it, and in essence it's exactly the same setup. So this is the box. The other wire you're going to see later. You do get a second wire that comes with it, which gives you your additional video ins. It gives you a separate USB lead to plug in a USB dongle with your movies on it if you want movies. It's got a trigger for backup. It's got key 2, not sure what that does yet, we'll discover. It's got key 1, not sure what that does, but we'll discover. But I'm pretty sure that with this touch screen interface that they have on some models, it's not something I'm going to even try because I'm happy with the manual control, but this probably allows you to put either an overlay on an existing screen on the sensor system so you can touch screen these controls, or it may even somehow interface with the touch screen on an existing vehicle. I have done a lot of Googling on this. I can't find any reference to touchscreen interfacing with retrofitted CarPlay units, so I'm guessing that this is going to stay in the box. This is if you know anything about this, message me, but I'm quite happy. This cool little control, I've got some ideas of where I'm going to put it in the car, and I think it will fit in quite discreetly, out of sight pretty much, and it will just allow me to do all this cool stuff. Oh, it's got a little home icon, I hadn't noticed that, so you can go back. Yeah, there's no USB device plugged in at the moment, but okay, right, that's it for now. Let's go and fit this thing. So that's what we're going to be installing, so let's get started. A little bit nervous about this one because unlike the VBB8 unit that was designed specifically for this car and there was some guidance with the instructions, this will suit any car with an RCA input, right? So this isn't designed specifically for the Volvo. So yeah, we've got the main unit, we've got the control, and then, as you saw briefly in that other video inside, we've got this wire here, which is your main connector, which is going to give you power, is going to give you the USB connection for the phone. It's also going to give you your audio out, left and right RCA, and your video out. So this is the main connector. This might be the only connector you'll want to install. It's got the mic input in this one as well. I've got the normal tools, as you would imagine. I've got my little labeler, because I like to label every wire that I connect up. I've got a voltage tester so I can find a good positive and an ignition fed positive as well in the car. I've got the usual panel removal tools. Really recommend these because you do not want to break those plastic poppers as you remove panels in the car. I've got some electrical tape, of course, wire strippers, wire connectors. I particularly like these ones. These allow you to go in line to an existing cable, add a new cable, and it gives you, you wouldn't want obviously a high amp connection off of this, but I know from testing this thing in my office, it's very, very low amp draw, even when it's running at full pelt, even when it's charging your phone. So yeah, I mean, at most you're going to get 2 amps pulling off of this thing. I've also got some yellow electrical connectors I might use, and the usual tools. The Scarpa tape that you saw 3 years ago, the roll is still going, can't recommend this stuff enough. And yeah, that kind of multi-tool that I had before as well. So let's get inside the car, and the first job's going to be finding out where I'm going to install this little button. Now for me, this is the most important part of the installation, because wherever these controls go, they have to be in the correct orientation, because I know from reading the manual and playing with it on that demo setup that this is back skipper track, forward, home and back aren't so important, but you need this somewhere that's yeah, ergonomic, that's intuitive, that you can reach for it without any problems. So some people might consider here, which is obviously nice and in view and potentially easy for a passenger to use it, not with the gear in park obviously. That though does my head in completely. The idea of that there, I just find offensive, so I wouldn't put it there. You could put it up here maybe, which isn't in direct view, and I think that's just not very brilliant. So to me, the obvious place is exactly where we had the controls before. So we've got the on-off control for the VBB8 unit here, and above that, that push rubber button that I fitted that's out of sight normally, which enables you to cycle through the video inputs on the VBB8. So I need to leave just a little gap to slip a finger in there, but at the same time, of course, that is replicated by just simply pressing and holding the exit button, or pressing and holding the radio button. There are various buttons that also double up as that feature. So if I can find a way of getting this tucked in here, I will be delighted, because that is such an easy controlling position from the driver's seat, and yeah, it feels brilliant. It's out of sight. What I'm not particularly keen on is just using a rubber, you know, one of these sticky back pads and sticking it on there, because I know from experience those things on a hot day fall off, and I'm going to have problem after problem. So I'm going to look to find a much more permanent way of fitting it here without drilling into here. Now, if I have to drill into here, I will, because at the end of the day, a single black blanked grommet would reverse that work without anyone ever knowing it ever happened. But I'm going to try and avoid it. So yeah, this switch, the more integrated I can make it look without causing any permanent damage to the car, the better. So obviously I've just taken this apart. This all clips apart, so the knob just slides off the top, and if you hold the bezel and push, hold the bit around the edge, the bevel if you like, then you get to here. Okay, so we're down to this already. There's 4 Phillips head screws here and a connector, so you could potentially take this out, run the wire from the other direction, which you probably wouldn't want to do, because actually the connector on this is those lovely circular ones which are nice and easy to run through things. Now my plan is, I want to mount the control there just below the car keys so they don't dangle into this section. If I take out these 4 screws, this is my thoughts, I'm going to put a metal L bracket on the back, squeeze the L bracket into here, which is going to hold it nice and tight, much better than a sticky back plastic thing, and then rivet that bracket onto the back of here. This is my plan. Then I'm going to look at this wire, because I don't really like the idea that there's a wire hanging out the bottom. So if I can find a way of routing this wire through behind this as neatly as possible, I will do it. So a bit like the last video, you're going to see how I get on. Hopefully it will look good by the end of it. Here we go. Now let's try and get the bracket on and see if we can get it working. Okay, so what I've done is I've removed those 4 tiny Phillips screws from this circuit board, which then just lifts away to reveal this behind. And I've got this bracket here. This is just a standard bracket. You find them in any hardware store. It's a galvanized bracket. Obviously it's silver. I'm going to put some black Scarpa tape on that just in case you see any element of it in the final installation. I've laid that onto the back of here and marked it where the bracket's going to go. And I'm going to drill those holes, and I'm going to fit aluminium rivets in there, and then protect the back of the aluminium rivets against the circuit board with more Scarpa tape, put the whole thing back together, and then I will have a bracket permanently fixed to this, which can then be tucked into the dashboard. That's the plan. So I've just put a couple of rivets on there, which has held that plastic onto there very, very well indeed. Now, just because you've got this tiny bit that could be, as that slots into the dashboard, you might just see this top. So I've just got some, rather than the Scarpa tape I originally said, I've got some black electrical tape, which is obviously kind of a more better matched finished, if you like. So if I stretch that over, because of course you don't need these holes, it's literally just going to tuck into the dashboard, and the kind of the friction of the bracket tucked in there is going to be the way it fixes. Yeah, that looks okay, I think. That looks alright. So that's that, and I'm going to just cover up those two aluminium exposed points there, because of course we are going to be putting a circuit board back on top, and this is electrical tape. It is actually high temperature electrical tape as well, not that this thing's going to be getting hot, it's just a control. But again, as you've seen with my other videos, I do go a bit over top sometimes, over the top. I think it's always worth anything, any point that could be a weak point, while you're there, cover it, sort it. So there we have that. You don't see anyway apart from the very top. That's in, and now I'm ready to reattach this. So I've got those four little screws back in. They were a bit of a fiddle, to be honest, but they're back in, and now I'm just going to put this cap back on the top, which just clicks back into position, and then finally back on with the push switch. So now that is ready to tuck inside the dash. This wire, looking inside that, there's no way I can see of hiding this wire neatly, so when it's installed it will just be tucked up like that and it will run in. I can live with that. You could potentially shave this back very carefully with a Stanley knife, or even strip the wire back, then run it through behind and into the same seam. But do you know what? For this install, I don't think it's worth it. And I think I'll be able to do this without damaging the dashboard or causing any permanent damage to the car at all. So here we go, we've got our bracket now installed on the back of that. These are lovely smooth rivets, no problem with that at all. These are just aluminium rivets, by the way, nothing special. And now this hopefully will squeeze in this little gap here. Now I've got to position it so I've still got room to get into that switch, not that I ever need to use it. So I reckon about there. There we go. And that just squeezes in that gap, and that ain't going anywhere. That is now absolutely solid. I could pull it straight out again, but given the fact that you're going to be doing this, that is a superb location. That is really good. I'm just going to hang the keys up. Yeah, okay, so that one just about touches the top of it. If that becomes a problem, what I will do is put a bit of tape across the top just to protect against any scratches, but I don't think it is. To be honest, this is my parents' house key. I'll probably take it off my keyring. Now, this wire here, I'm going to somehow trace into this part here and tuck round using one of those tools and feeding it down. That might irritate me. I might end up just drilling a hole directly underneath and poking that wire through, but for today and for the initial install I'm just going to do it this way. That is the correct way up. It works really nicely there, and if it bugs me I will fix it in due course. What I don't want to do is drill the dashboard if I can help it, even though a simple black grommet would fix the hole and no one would ever see it. I don't know, I'm just a bit anal about stuff like that. Right, okay, so now it's a time for tracing this down, finding some space for the silver box, wiring up to the power, wiring up to the VBB8, and then we can turn it on. That sounds like a short process, but it won't be. So this is the area where we installed the VBB8 unit, and I remember from watching back that video myself that this just pops off. So you just need to get your hands under and just pull. There we go. So no special tool required to remove this panel. Now this hasn't been open for 3 years, so it hasn't been a problem. And then in here, there she is. Still tucked safely, nice and safely in there. and really everything I need is in this area. And you can see I've got this wire here for the control unit that can just slide down into this area as well, and yeah, all good as gold. So now what I'm going to do is, obviously there we've got our VVB8 unit. We've got the controls for the menu up and down. I remember labelling those 3 years ago. They're all still there, so it's easy to add the third AV. I had it turned off before, so I've just re-enabled that through the menu system. And now it's just a case of finding, you remember everything was labelled. So I've got audio out RCAs here. Got the audio out RCAs, and this, I'm hoping, yes, AV3 input. So now, what else have we got here? We've got front cam audio there, which we don't need. So here we go, AV3 input. So in here, if I unwrap these, we will find we've got our 3 RCAs, which are ready to go straight into the new unit. So that's great. I know I've got power here that I can tap into for the new unit. I've got my controls in position. All I'm going to need to run is a microphone, of course, and find a space in here. It's quite tight down here this side, maybe the same space on the other side to actually install that unit, the new one. So this unit is quite chunky. It's thicker than the last one, not much, but a little bit. Interestingly, a lot of you will see this and think, oh, that's an SD card slot. It's not actually. But it is in perfect alignment. If you look in there, you won't see it. In perfect alignment with what I believe is the Bluetooth aerial. So maybe you can get an aerial extension for it. I don't know what that's about, but it's too thin for an SD card, so it definitely isn't for that. So yeah, we've got two wires that need to go into here. One for the CarPlay and one for the USB dongle that you might have movies on or whatever. So I'm going to plug both of those in, and those will be run to some other section of the car. I'm not sure where yet. I'm not sure how I'm going to do that, but I'm going to have to pull off this panel to see if we've got room for it. Exactly the same as the other side. Just get involved with this one, just pull it straight off. It's quite a hardy panel. Just get that out of the way a sec. And now I remember I ran wires this side, but yes, I've got various little pockets of space in here that I can use. Or indeed there's space right up here as well. Perfect, that just fits straight in there. Wires can be run across the top. The question is where I'm going to bring out these USB connectors. That's going to be a big one. The rest of it's all fairly straightforward. Where I'd like them to go is the glove box, but we'll see. Don't know if there's going to be enough length. So I will get some of that draft excluder tape on these to hold it in nice and tightly and safely, and to take any shocks. But there is already a wiring loom, if you come around this side, running along here, so I can follow that same area, knowing that that's quite a safe part of the car. It doesn't get too hot. I can even cable tie on potentially to these existing looms to keep everything neat and tidy. Next, I'm going to try and get better access to this glove box in the center console. Easiest way to do that is to remove this rubber for a start, and then that exposes 4 screws which are attached to this kind of velour-y box element. I'm hoping that will release the back half. I can't find a how-to video on how to do this, so I'm going to have to basically just give it a try. If I really come unstuck, I will just run the wires up from underneath, but I'm hoping it will be a series of screws. Let's see if there's anything under this section. No, there isn't. There's no trim attachments, but I'll keep that out the way anyway. Interesting. Oh well, let's unscrew it and see what happens. Yeah, I'm using my phone to give a bit of light. You can see there are 4 T20 star bits, star screw heads in there that you need to remove, and you need quite a long extension to get down there and do it, or a long screwdriver. But let's see what happens when I remove these. So I've got those 4 screws loose at this end now, which has enabled the back half to be lifted, but it's still attached at the front, and the pinch points are here, not the pinch points, the connecting points are here and here. Now I remember from last year, this can be prised up, which is no problem here, but to bring this forward, to reveal the screws that are holding this in, I had to make up this little tool again to enable me to get the screws out round the back. Again, I'm using the T20 star bit. Ooh, I tighten those up well. Can't believe it was 3 years ago I did this. And this car's still got under 50,000 miles on it. I'm still using it as my main car. No intention to replace it just yet. Let me know if you're interested. That's one. And I need to get around the other side to do the other. You really do need to make up that funny little tool to get in there. It's so tight. There we go. This bit's a bit scary. The nice white tool I had before, unfortunately I can't find. So I've got this other one, which is a plastic prizing tool, but it scares me. This whole bit lifts off to reveal some screws here and here that then allows this whole section to lift off, which will then allow the centre console to lift off. But I need that tool. Come on, this is where I want to be. Is it going to let me do it? There we go. Yeah. Ow, ow, ow. Yes, this is all. Remember this now. Just check, nothing snaps. Now it makes the most horrible sounds, but nothing snaps. Put that on the back seat, and now again it's going to be the same size. We'll just whip off those screws. So we've got 2 screws, one there and one there. They're the first to come off. Why is it not lifting off? What else am I missing? I've got the screws off at the back there. This should lift now. It's this, isn't it? This is the horrible out and in moment that I actually had to refer to the original video to remember how we did it. It is a nightmare, this part, because this is where you could easily carve up the old dashboard. Oh, is it? There we go. That's it. Nothing's broken, all is good. And now what I'm hoping are the last 2 screws. Now note, these ones are a lot longer than the last 2, and they're a different thread. So the others are more like a screw, whereas this is much more like a like a threaded bolt. Right now, so now we lift it out, got those screws out, got those screws out. It's a lift up either side. Before I had that tool that I squeezed in either side and I put tape there. You can just lift up either side and it has the same effect. Just do that with your fingers, and then it's a case of so you lift it up there, then bring this bit forward, and then it all lifts up. And there's a connector. the bottom here. Oh, dearie me. Should have watched more of my old video. Do you remember this connector? The big grey one? That one has to come off to allow you to lift this up, I forgot. Okay, so this clip here, which is clipped onto the chassis as you lift it out. The other thing to bear in mind is, obviously with ignition off you cannot, oh you can actually. Yeah, there's a little lock, a little yellow lock. You see the little yellow lock round here? Where is it? Here. Yeah, with the ignition you may need to pull this yellow lock down to free up the gear stick. So you can now lift this clean off. Wow. And after all that, we finally reveal these 2 points here that we just unscrew, which I'm hoping will release this center console. So this is the iPhone USB connector, or also the Android one. I'm going to feed it behind the carpet at the front here. I'm going to run it all the way along behind the skirt. Now this is loose. I can get it underneath. And eventually we want it to come up in this box in one of the holes at the very back here, which you can probably see me waggling my finger. And this is a bit of a game, because there is a connector connected to the USB that's part of the sensor system inside this glove box, which makes it very, very hard to get any manoeuvrability on this at all. But in it goes, come on. And there we go, there we have it, it's in. So that wire is following all the other wires along the same channel. And there's yeah, that's fine, there's plenty of room inside the glove box to connect it up. So now all I need to do is put all this back together. So for this section I removed all of these, sorry that's not it, I removed all these screws, which I didn't need to. This rubber mat just pops out, revealing these 2 voids at the back, and you can run the wire directly from the unit on the passenger side of the tunnel, run the wire up here. I'm going to tape that into position all the way round, and then in the glove box you will have your USB access just for your memory stick to go in there with all your movies on it. So that's the final finish. No damage, no holes drilled. That's just coming up at the back, ready for a USB stick, and the rubber mat is back in. You've just got 2 bits there that you push down at the front when you pop it back in. Very easy job. Next is the positioning of the microphone, which I would like right by me. So as the driver you can very clearly give instructions to Siri, brilliant for hands-free calling, etc., which with CarPlay you will want to be using it primarily for that. So this I can see already, if I use my little plastic tool. This is an SRS airbag, so I don't want to run wires down it. I'm going to run the wires. Let's have a look what's going on here. I do not want to trigger an airbag at this point. Yeah, pull this down. Well, there is the airbag. Right, okay. I'm not going to... You can actually see the airbag just tucked behind there. So I'm not going to go anywhere near that. So just using this little plastic tool just to tuck this wire, just literally just to hide it in that seam, because the airbag roll starts about here. So obviously if that goes off, I wouldn't mind if a foam coated thing hit me. That's not going to be a problem, but I do not want in any way this to obstruct the airbag for obvious reasons. So now that's away from the airbag, I'm just going to run that down here, and I'm going to run it loose, so if this thing does go off in an accident, it's not going to, as I say, get caught round it or anything like that. It's not going to interfere with it. In fact, when you look at it, that seam there is enough just to pop that back in. There's enough of a little rubber seam just here that you can take your plastic tool open it up that side and just run the wire in totally invisibly down that channel. I'm just going to follow that all the way down and then start bringing the wire from that across. But that's I think that's nice and neat. That's no problem. That certainly doesn't stand out like an eyesore, and it just clips on. Very simple. Again, no permanent marks or harm to the car if you want to take this system out and put it in a different vehicle at a later date. So obviously we've got to get this wire right across to the passenger side. So at this point, again, just lift this flap enough to get the wire in without causing any damage to the trim. You can see it just pins it in there. Again, for an invisible finish, this panel just clips back a bit, takes the wire quite happily. There's no point removing that wire's in there. Now we can start tracing it all the way across and plugging it into the new unit. Got two 8mm hex bolts in here that need to be loosened off. Well, I would recommend loosening them off when running your microphone cable across to the center console and eventually to the passenger side, because they'll allow you to pin the wire out of the way. I'm also going to use the Scarpa tape just to keep that wire secure. That's one of them, just little black hex bolts. And there's another one. There's also a light, an interior light down here. So I don't expect this panel to come away very far. It's just enough for it to flap back a bit so I can get some tape in there and run the wire across, because you do not want any wires hanging down by your foot pedals, all right? You've also got the, I think they call it the OBD socket or something, or OB socket. So yeah, that flaps down enough now that I can run the wire quite securely through. Without interfering with anything. Perfect. And run it behind the bolts as well, so they'll also help hold it up out of the way. Yeah, now there is, as I say, there's a light here, so you want to kind of avoid that, because actually it looks like it's LED, but you don't want any heat against that wire. So again, I'm just going to take the wire clear of that connection. God, this stuff is so sticky, which you need it to be, right? Yeah, it sticks to this plastic nicely. Right, okay. Get those bolts back in. So at this stage I've got the microphone wire loosely taped to a screwdriver so I can get it through this tiny little hole that passes right through to the other side of the car. There we go. Now I can untape that the other side, tape that back, but yeah, I've run other wires with the previous unit here and no problems. So next, exactly as I did with the other unit, I've still got some of this door seal in my garage. So it's pretty good, and it's still stuck onto the other one. just making sure that if it is in an area that's going to get bumped from time to time, it just gives it that little bit of protection, and yeah, does the job. Right, so at this stage, that is the microphone. Beautifully, on this model, everything is labelled. This is normally my job. So by the time everything's connected and taped, it will be very obvious what's what. But what I've done is now the unit is in there. It's tucked in that little gap there, just beneath here, but where it's got the sponge there, I'm quite confident that that is not going anywhere. That is beautifully sat there, and obviously the sponge not only protects it, but it creates a tiny air gap, just enough for a bit of ventilation as well. Not a huge amount, but as I say, I've run this thing for a long time. It doesn't get hot, so I'm not too worried about that. So all these wires now, some of them just need capping off that aren't going to be used. So we've got audio out left and right and video out. That's going to go straight into the BB8 unit. That's the next connection. What else have we got here? Let's have a look through them. So we've got the backup, that's your reverse trigger for it to switch to a reversing camera. I'm going to keep with the existing system on that. I'm not going to complicate things. You've got key 1 and key 2. Now I believe, and I'm not certain, that these are little LEDs which will basically light up when you have integrated steering wheel control, so you can check what is registering as key 1 and key 2, because these are little LEDs on the end by the looks of things, which is strange. Don't really know what those are for. I should probably read the manual, shouldn't I? What else have we got? We've got the touch screen interface that we touched earlier. So really key 1, key 2 and the touch screen interface. Not things I'm using on this install, something to look at maybe. The backup I'm not using on this install. Mic obviously I'm using, camera in and video in, so those other 2 AV feeds not using, so this can all be bundled up. And there's my power, which I'll run straight off the same power source that I'm using on the existing Volvo Tech unit. And finally there's this wire, the black wire, which is described in the manual as not in use. So presumably that's something, some sort of, I don't know what the hell that is, but yeah, it's got wires to it and it's connected. Maybe it's something for factory kind of updates or whatever. So that's it. That's where we are so far. Final connections, here we come. So again, exactly the same. The other side, I've got a long screwdriver, bit of tape that I've folded back on itself just to run the wires through this void from one side to the other. It's just a lot quicker. I've got some wires that have got to come the other way. So this is the power cable going in, so that's now ready to be connected. What else have we got? I've got to tidy the mic lead up, that's a bit long. This one, I've got a whole bundle here that are not being used, so I want to put those in a plastic bag. I've got to bring over the AV input from this side. Yeah, again, I'm going to need the screwdriver for that. So now for the installation of this. This little bracket can hide the wire tucked up behind it, which then squeezes in position like so. Okay, so that's quite neat and tidy. Take this out, I don't really want that on. I can still access these buttons here, and that's a nice control position there. So now I've got to use this soft tool to push in the wire as best I can into this void. Now, annoyingly, the wire actually comes in here, and I'd have an opportunity to run it down through around the back here, which would be great, but it looks like I'd have to take off so many other panels to achieve that. Oh, actually, hang on a second. Hang on just 1 second. This is worth seeing. There is a tiny amount of give. And believe you me, I don't push anything to the point that it would snap. Famous last words. But that is actually going through there, which would be great, because that would then hide that wire completely. I'm going to persevere for just a second. Come on, you know you want to. Right, let's make life a little bit easier. So if I take off these top two, which actually I put back on loosely earlier, just to make sure I kept the right things in the right places. Now I know that the ventilation system goes in here, but there is still a void beneath it. So if we tuck that through there, pop this bad boy down here. Come on. Sometimes just rotating the wires enough to make it flick up so you can pinch it with your fingers. There it is. There it is. And there's the connection. So that's perfect. Pull that through. Make sure. And that, I think that looks pretty tidy there. Yes, you've got that tiny nubbin underneath it. But as it goes, I've not had to drill a single hole to install this, not a single hole. Obviously with the previous install, as you can see here, there were a couple of holes, and you can see, there we are, 3.5 years later, or 3 years later, everything's still beautifully in place and well protected, no problem. So it's worth taking the time to do it right the first time. Not that I really do know what I'm doing, but you know, sometimes that's a good thing. It makes you that little bit more cautious. So I'm just going to put some loops of tape around this central beam. Just because I think any, you know, especially where you've got a heating system involved, any chance of things getting too hot or getting caught in the way. I'll be honest with you, with all this tape, I don't think I ever would want to uninstall this system, but when no holes have been drilled, it's always an option. I'd be pretty disappointed if this doesn't fire up as it should at the end, I tell you. There we go. Right, we are literally nearly to the point, of just doing the final power connections. I've just got to connect that up. So exactly the same with any connection I make. A little bit of tape. These connectors are very good, very similar to the others we used. Goes in there, it's a nice positive click, but even better, taping those joins. I always fold back the tape a little bit, so if you do have to undo it, you've got a start, you know. And that ain't going anywhere now. Right, so I just need to bunch that up, stick a little cable tie around it, shove it in a little hole down here so it's nice and protected and out of the way and safe. And then it's the final power connections, and we are, oh no it's not, we've still got to connect those together, so that's easy. That's just colour match up, tape them. I'll do this next. So yeah, little cable tie on there for the excess on the controller, and then that can just tuck into that little void there. This is just a heating ventilation pipe. You see I've put plastic over those bits that we didn't use. I've still got a void left there for the final connections, which we'll do now. These were wrapped up carefully when I installed the VBB8. So easy as anything, red to red. Typical, isn't it? I saying I always leave a tab so I can undo the tape, but this is masking tape. In fact, this is the best masking tape in the world. The blue Scotch masking tape. I mean, look at that, it's 3.5 years old and it's still sticky, yet still easy to remove. Right, so those three are now connected, so just a little bit of tape on each. And this is the audio and video connection, obviously from the new CarPlay Android Auto through to the VBB8, which then interfaces with the Volvo sensor system. So by the end of this I will have added, crikey, a front camera, a rear camera, a video player, extra MP3 and Bluetooth capability should I want it, and Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. And it's really, for me, the Apple CarPlay was the main thing. I'm sure when I first turn this on there's going to be resolution settings to mess around with and aspect ratio settings, so I'm preparing for all of that. Right, so we've got to find a little void for this to tuck into. Actually, I think there's still room in there. I obviously don't want them to be right next to the box if I can help it. Are they going to stick in there, do you reckon? I reckon so. Yeah, not right next to the box, because really any you know, the processing and the power that's running through that thing could interfere with the image. Not that it's going to be high definition, but okay. Okay, so this is an edit and it will save you absolutely hours. We got to the end of the install, powered it up and everything was absolutely fine, then realised that this lead here, of course in the original Volvo Tech VBB8 unit install, was never fitted. This is just a simple 3.5mm jack to, you know, stereo RCA wire, okay, and this is one I happen to have in my office. All I'm going to do is plug that into the auxiliary input there. The reason this was never done with the original install is, of course, because I was using it for a forward and reverse camera, so there was no audio feed from either of those cameras. Now I'm including audio from the phone, etc. I do need to wire this in, so you're lucky you're watching this. I wish I'd had this video to refer to, because it would have saved me several hours. So again, exactly the same with USB. I'm going to feed this 3.5mm jack into the hole on the other side. There it is. Oh, well, nearly there it is. Oh, and typical, I've now lost the USB on the other one. So let's just pull that there a sec. Yeah, this is a bit fiddly, I won't lie to you. The USB one particularly, because it's a much shorter wire. So you're only going to need about 1 metre to reach, but I would suggest an RCA to 3.5mm jack of at least 1.5 meters. This one I've got is probably 2.5 metres, so I'm going to have to bundle it up a bit. There we go. So both of those are in, and now that's good. Just to stop them falling back through those holes while I go to the next stage, I'm going to pop this plastic bit in. Obviously I'm going to have to remove it again to tighten up the 4 screws at the bottom of this unit, but it will stop it falling back through that hole. So I plug that one in, it'll do an even better job. Actually, I don't want the wire to be that loose. I want it to be fairly tight, but not so tight that I can't remove it. Yeah, that's good, like that. Now obviously you can get a right angle jack, which would be probably a slightly neater job. To be honest, I'm not bothered. This is a nice neat thing. It's perfect for me to plug in the phone for charging and connection to the CarPlay, so that's good enough. And now it's exactly the same with the USB. You've got to kind of rock and roll this cabinet to get the wire through, which doesn't take long. There we go, that's in. And now that's ready to be connected to the RCAs this side. So all I'm doing is running this wire nice and low down where it's not going to get kicked and scratched, keeping it away from the gearbox. They were plastic covered like these ones. So this is the front camera RCA in, which obviously we don't need, that audio in. And now this is the audio out from the VBB8 unit. So all I need to do is connect these two up, white to white, red to red. I'm going to get some tape round those to seal them, then I'm going to bunch up this cable, and I'm going to use one of these multiple use cable ties, because I find they're really good if you ever need to get the wire out. You don't have to cut them and start again. You just put them through like that, and it's as strong as a cable tie, but it's removable. Clever little things. There we go. Find a hole for that right there. I'll just get the tape. So now I'm just putting back together the box, and for what it's worth, if you're watching this this back, there are 4 screws that go in this rear section. They're quite fiddly, you need a nice long screwdriver, and they are this sort here without the washer built in. Exactly the same screws go at the front here and here, and then you've got another 2, again just the rounded head screws that go here and here, but these go on once that central panel's in place, and there's only 2 screws out of this whole center console that are different, which is this type, and they go at the very top. Oh, typical. Where this is deep, you're gonna have to get yourself one of these. This is a magnet on a stick, because these screws keep falling in places they shouldn't, and it's a nightmare. I mean, it will take you 5 to 10 minutes just to get these 4 screws in, because they are very fiddly. So yeah, just be as patient as you can. Start with the hardest ones, and then things can only get easier, right? Come on. Oh god. Almost, yep, it's in. Now, I took these out with a ratchet set, but to be honest, they're so fiddly, and I'm tightening them up hand tight with this. I think this is enough. Again, all of these screws are the, what do they call it? T20, I think. Yeah, T20 size star. Well, that'll be obvious once you start this whole process. My goodness me. Even though it's a sunny day today, this box is as black as midnight. You cannot see in there at all. Okay, so I've got those 2 screws in there, got the 4 screws in the back, and now, don't forget to get that out of the way, I'm now going to put this back on. For what it's worth, these pop up on eBay. They do some really nice ash and wood ones. I might look to change this if I see one that comes up for the right price, just because it'd be a nice little upgrade. I've got the cream leather seats. I think a lighter dash would be quite nice. Fun little weekend project if I get one cheaply. Remember, this goes straight down through that hole. Oh, onto there. It's a bit of a game. Yeah, then it's that kind of motion. You want to pinch down, and in she pops, no problem. And now I've got 4 screws left. Well, actually I've got 6 screws left, but these round ones that I mentioned before with the washers, these are your top left and right screws right at the very top here. Then you've got the really long ones. These go either side of the CD, and they go in really deep. These are the ones that give you the most of the strength in the whole thing. Don't know why they need to go in this deep. Don't know if they picked something else up behind, I don't know. I'll just put it back as I found it. I will say that when you take these things apart, even though they're modern cars and they're mostly built by robots and all the rest of it, the build quality of these cars is superb. You know, there's attention to detail at every stage that I'm sure some kind of cheaper makes would bypass. Get what you pay for, right? Right, okay. These are the ones I hate, these little 2 here that have to go around the back. And again, I've made up this crazy tool. If you've got bits like this in your toolkit, it's just yeah, a posi bit adapter on a right angle, and then I stick that in. But that is the perfect tool for getting in and out these there it is, for getting in and out these screws around the back here. I don't know how else you'd do it. a lot of frustration and a tiny socket set, I'd imagine, with a Aussie bit adapter. I find the best way is just to start them off by hand, just so they're kind of held in, ready to go. Definitely the hardest screws to get out of this whole process. And to be honest, I find leaning forward you're more comfortable even though you're doing it blind, you know? But without that right angle you wouldn't have sufficient torque to tighten them up, they're quite stiff. And with the rubber cup, this goes in a certain way. It's got that little rubber teat on one side that drops into a similarly shaped hole and holds it in place. But even with the two wires in there, it still works really nicely. You can still unplug that, plug it back in comfortably. So that's the finished result. You can see this isn't fixed, it's loose, same with this, and there's just enough give on that so I can undo it, and if I wanted to plug something else in, which I never will, it is a possibility. That will now stay in permanently in there, and it's quite a neat job. There's plenty of room there to take the phone and the charging cable. This one goes back in very simply. It's literally a push and click, like that, in it goes. This one, don't forget the green wire, straight back in. It's worth checking that it's properly clipped in. Didn't mean to do that. This green wire needs to go straight down in between the two the wire from the green connector. And then just line it up and like that. Right, now I'm going to attach into the center console this, I would recommend this Belkin lightning cable for my iPhone. Next up I'm going to, obviously an Apple one would be better, but yeah, they're like 20 quid or whatever. Plug in the phone. That pops in there, shut the glove box. So again, clipping that back on there, reattaching the connector, making sure everything's sound and secure. So yeah, mine's a 2013 model, but end of 2013. In fact, that's interesting, you can see there, it was actually produced on the 12th of the 5th, or maybe the 5th of the 12th, because I know it was registered on the 31st of December 2013. Right, okay, so now for those side panels to go in. So just putting in these panels, these are easy, I shouldn't say it, but yeah, they just clip in. All those wires safely installed. It's worth bearing in mind when you first start up the CarPlay device that you might find that the screen isn't quite in center. Now this is why the VBB8 unit labelled with menu up and down is so important. And I recommend a tool like this or a blunt pencil so you can easily access these controls, because they're quite fiddly to get in there, but they give you a degree of control, a menu system that enables you to change various settings on the screen output: saturation, colour, contrast, brightness, and all the rest of it. Let's have a look at some of those options now. And there we go. So if you can read those, you've got contrast, brightness, saturation, position, vertical and horizontal. And just by pressing the menu button, it's a bit clunky, but you can go through and you can adjust these as you like. So you can see, you can adjust the position. I've already been through this, so I know it's all good. This I don't know, infrared AV1, infrared AV2. I guess that's what it is. So presumably there's an infrared interface you can get with this. Guide left, guide right. No idea what that is. I'll leave that as is. Guide control. It's switched on. Don't know what that means. And PDC HPOS. So yeah, Volvo Tech, if you're watching this, tell me what these things mean. AV1-2 main on. I don't know what these things mean. All I know is that this way round it works, and I can just toggle through. By the way, Volvo Tech actually messaged me on a previous video and said if I switch jumper 8 to the on position when I'm in reverse, which I'll demonstrate now because it will just jump straight to reverse, it would come up with the radar screen. But I tried that, and all it gave me was a tiny little slit at the side showing whatever was running in the background, radio, navigation, whatever. So that didn't really work. And out of interest, if I go now from reverse into park or drive again, it will switch back to the last AV system you're on. I'll be honest, this thing's going to replace my sensor system. I'm going to use this all the time because it's got everything I need. I think it's absolutely superb. I mean, the very fact, if you're an Amazon Music subscriber, if you've pegged that onto your Prime subscription, you can have all your offline music, and you can pretty much listen to any music you like as you go, as well as Spotify. Look, and of course you've got, if you're an Apple Music subscriber, you've got that, you've got your podcasts. It's incredible. and I was worried about radio. If I go to the BBC Sounds app, for example, this will not only allow me to listen to stuff previous shows, but every single BBC station is here. And of course there are loads of apps that do this, and they work well. So let's have a listen to Radio 6, click the button. It's so intuitive, this control. It is brilliant. It doesn't miss a beat. It's got a nice kind of click stop feel to it. And the left and right button controls give you additional functionality. It's superb. And the little circle button takes you straight back through. I've got Waze in here, WhatsApp, and full Siri control, so push and hold the middle button. Can you tell me today's date and the time?
It's 11:27.
Okay, Siri's not brilliant, but at least I got the time. And then of course you have got some settings for display, etc. also through the system, but they're really just contrast brightness. I fiddled with this. I think this is the best overall setting. So yeah, it works, and it's a major upgrade. So I'm delighted with this. I'll switch back to CarPlay. Obviously I've still got my main volume control here. So that's it, a successful install, and I'm absolutely delighted with the result. CarPlay adds so much functionality to this car. It was the only reason I was thinking of changing this and getting a newer XC60, so really worth doing it if you have the time. In terms of allowing time to do this job, it's taken me about 7 hours because we've been making this film and starting and stopping, and obviously when you do a job without instructions, we ended up taking out that center console twice, screwing it back in again. You won't have to do that if you watch this video, so I reckon you'll do this in 2 to 3 hours. In terms of the functionality of this system, we haven't even touched on it. There's Bluetooth in there, there's the MP3 and video functionality as well. All this stuff is going to come with a follow-up video, so do click subscribe if you're thinking about doing this, because not only will the follow-up video give you all those details, but it will tell you where you're going to be able to get this exact unit. As I said at the start of this film, we trialled 2 different units before we found this one. Both of them we had issues with the controls not being very responsive and with it freezing, etc. So it's worth hitting subscribe if you're interested. And finally, thanks ever so much for watching. The comments have been fantastic in the past, and I really hope that many of you decide to give this a go and you'll be as delighted as I am. All the best.